Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Oh my goodness, where do I start? The journey leading up to this point has been nothing short of amazing, spectacular, eye-opening, and it's definitely tested my earbuds, no pun intended. Now, whether you're someone that listens to a podcast, is starting to, create one at some point, you like to binge them, or it's something that you've not gone around to listen to yet, but you'd like to, well, welcome to my first masterclass. What exactly is a masterclass? Honestly, it's a way for me to tell you about my areas of expertise, because I guess that I do fall under that area after presenting a few award-winning podcasts. It's woo! Okay. Um, Honestly, I would say that it's not necessarily something that I always aspire to be in. It's something that through my near a decade at the BBC grew a lot of interest into, because I find it so fascinating that you can literally touch audiences from around the world through one sense. Podcasts are literally revolutionary. The fact that I can be doing a million things whilst learning facts about World War One, or about hacks, or friendship dilemmas, or a true crime story, it's definitely given me a new perspective on storytelling and information that doesn't take too much of my attention. I would say that this journey for me personally began about 5 years ago when I started working on very demanding programs for the BBC. So a lot of that was 24-hour news programs, and many of my friends will definitely know about the insane schedule that I had. The fact that I could be speaking to audiences in Southeast Asia at 4 in the morning and having to sound exactly like this, even though being half asleep most of the time. But that was a really great place to start. It wasn't something that was super desirable because it meant very antisocial hours, some of that being about 60 hours a week. But the amount of training, I would sleep in a headscarf and wear God knows what on my 3 a.m. lunch breaks. And when it was time to come and deliver, that's exactly what I would do. So I did that quite consistently for about a year and a bit. And I thought, oh, okay, telling these, bulletins and breaking news and stories through the radio airwaves in less than 1 minute, we had to do all of this in 1 minute bulletins, is very challenging. It's something that requires very fast script writing, always got to be on the ball, always got to look out for the latest headline. Why can't I let things breathe a bit? Does that exist? Yes, it does. And it's called a podcast. It's called a podcast, which is essentially a longer form of audio that doesn't really have much of a limit. I say one of the longest podcasts that I listened to was with a young woman who tells a story about living in North Korea. And growing up during, the really strict regime. That podcast alone was about 3.5 hours, and it took me a week to go through. But it was so informative because it didn't feel as though there was much of a insane time limit. It didn't feel too restrictive. There was time to breathe, there was time to delve into a story, and there was time to essentially learn more, which was amazing. So long form was the next step for me, especially after working on shorter news areas. And when I stepped into that realm, it was a combination of stories that were of interest and stories that were in the agenda. So I worked on the elections, the Nigerian elections. It is one, I should have made you guess, because whenever people ask where I'm from, I typically say it's the best country in Africa. You know, the only reason why they guess Nigeria is because only a Nigerian would say that. That's why they guess that. We're very loud, we're very boisterous, very charismatic, very bubbly, and definitely like to have a good time. So working on one of the most challenging elections was so hard. Those were 20-hour days. And even with that, all we had was our microphones. All we had was our laptops that we'd later be editing, our bulletins and news stories to send back to London so that could go out on air. There was so much happening in the physical realm, but the top key quality was always the audio. The audio doesn't see my ankles being bitten by mosquitoes standing in the middle of a random park to get the best sounds. The audio doesn't see the sweating, the wake-up calls, the runny tummy from drinking water out of a packet, thinking that I, had immersed myself into Nigerian life. And I think regardless of that, in the end, it is the audio that works. It's what grabs your attention. It's what makes you want to continue listening. It's what makes you want to hit follow and subscribe. Now, I know that a lot of us here come from a range of different backgrounds. And again, as I said in the beginning, maybe it's something that you would consider looking into or delving into. One thing that I want to say to everyone here is whether you're in the media world or not, every single one of you has a voice. But what makes it quite debatable when it comes to the podcasting side of things is, do I have a voice that's strong enough to enter the podcasting world? Does it have to be something that goes on airwaves? Will people really care about my opinion? There's different kind of ways around it. We'll see. But just to excite you a little bit further on some of the perks that you can get from this masterclass, the first of many, I would like to run a mini competition because I feel like most of us couldn't be on social media. The best social media post gets a mentoring chat from me and another amazing executive journalist and a tour of the BBC on a lovely summer's day. So I'll definitely be keeping a lookout, and at the end of the night, I'll be sure to look through the post and let you know who's won. A random, maybe not necessarily a show of hands, but if anyone could shout out what certain things draws you into audio. If you're listening to anything, I'd be quite keen to know. Anything. Okay, where it's okay, I love it. I love it. Sometimes you need to listen to think of what you're gonna say. I get it. We're all in the podcasting realm. I absolutely love that. I definitely want to talk through, I would say, there's been a few. There's been some one-offs where I presented a podcast called Getting Married the Nigerian Way, and I was very much so with my boyfriend, now husband at this time. I knew, oh yeah, that happened. Woo! Marriage, woo! So that was so fascinating because that was something that, I knew about, I was exposed to. My brother got married a few years prior, so I definitely knew about it. But one thing that I'm very thankful to have, even if it's one-off series or something that you may have found if you search some of my work, I am a big lover of stories that are close to home. I'm a big lover of stories that challenge stereotypes. I've had the privilege to spend time and travel to 16 African countries. And when I decided to freelance about 5 years ago, one of the driving forces was that I really wanted to challenge stereotypes about the African continent. I really wanted people to walk away with a different view that they'd seen in the typical Western media. Come on, it's a massive continent. Is it really full of just Ebola, famine, war, corruption? Did you know that Sierra Leone has one of the most incredible beaches I have ever set foot on in my life? Togo, a small slice in the West African coast, has the most friendliest people. I could sleep on a beach for 10 hours and not be bothered. Dakar has such a buzzing, dynamic scene full of expats and travelers. That is a key message behind a lot of the work that I do in any realm, and especially in podcast. Even though this podcast that you're about to listen to a bit of is probably one of the most controversial things I'd ever worked on. Is anyone here a fan of true crime? Okay, we've got a few. Oh God, you guys like scary stuff. Well, gosh, me, I'm not the biggest fan of it simply because I just don't like being scared. There's some movies that I watched at the age of like 7 or 8 that still freaks me out. Um, but what was quite enticing about this particular type of true crime is that it was different. When I met with my team and sat down with BBC and CBC executives, I said the same thing I said a moment ago. A really important thing about my work and the things that I do is that I don't want people to see Africa as a scary place, where lots of bad things happen and that's all it's going to be. So even though parts of this true crime means that I will spend time in West African countries, I really want to shape my own narrative. And that's definitely a key thing that I want everyone to walk away with. Any key message that you have or you want to send out in the world, it's all about the takeaway that the audiences get from it. Do you want people's stereotypes to be challenged? How do you do that? What kind of people are you going to speak to? What's the interview setting going to be like? If you're talking about a general topic like, I don't know, like the dancing culture within the Black community in London, why are you just going into hip hop? What about the salsa scene, bachata? What about ballet? You want to ensure that in any of the stories that you're exploring, you're broadening your search. And often that will come with quite a bit of time, that will come with a lot of research, a lot of messages left unanswered, but at least you can give yourself the benefit of the doubt to say that you have researched well. With any idea, with any range of different people that you want to talk to, make sure you research well. So, you're now about to listen to probably one of the most second scariest interviews I've done. It's episode 3 of my award-winning podcast, Love Janessa. And the title of it is Meet the Boys. So just to set the scene for you, I'm in Ghana, a very beautiful part of West Africa. I've been there probably 13 times. Love it, love it. And I'm about to meet a Sakawa boy. So a Sakawa boy is what you would also call a Yahoo boy. A Yahoo boy is also what you would call a fraudster. So this is someone that engages in witchcraft and other activities as a way to entice their victims in order to get money. I'm definitely gonna delve a little bit more later about my thoughts on this and staying true to the point of challenging those stereotypes. So we're just gonna listen to the clip for the next 8 minutes. Enjoy. You can close your eyes if you want to, but just picture it. The weather is nice, not temperamental like it is here. And it's me on a roadside sitting with a little bit of a dangerous person. Yeah. It goes on. There really is a method to being a criminal, but I think regardless of the person that I spoke to or his background or etc., one thing I know for sure through years and years of interviewing is a technique. I am very anti closed answers. How's your day today? How's it been? Good. Do you like the color blue? No. Interview technique is absolutely crucial. And before I share a couple of my top tips, I'm really happy to say that we've got some amazing guests in the audience. I mean, many of you obviously are, but I'd like to give a personal shout out to Yolante Fawahimi. Yes, who I've seen for the 3rd time this week. It just gets better and better. We were at the podcast show London, which was a buzz, a really great place to connect with lots of podcasters, people that want to launch one, start one, commission one, and etc. I'm not going to speak about hers too much. I'm sure she'll definitely tell us more. But what do you love about your podcast and why you chose to create it?
So why I chose to create it is I'm a journalist and I was working in a newsroom where it was predominantly just very few black people in the newsroom. And I think my experience made me realise how much there's only so much you can do in those spaces. Even if you try and fight things, even if you try and document things, speak up for yourself, advocate for yourself, there's only so much you can do. And I just felt like, why do black writers, why are they so overlooked, undermined, underestimated? And I wanted to create an archive where you can go-to that just documented the stories of Black writers, but across all disciplines. So I interview rappers, singers, poets, journalists, authors, so all types of writing. And I think it was also me just wanting to understand how other people do what they do. And I think we can just all learn from each other from different disciplines. So that's why I started it. In terms of what I love about it, I think, I love the idea that it's not just journalists that I'm interviewing, that it's other types of writers. And it's also that I get to talk to them about not just their writing craft, but who they are, why they do what they do, their journey, their family, their failures, their lessons. And yeah, there's just everyone's got different ways of doing things and has different backgrounds. And I think that impacts the way they write and the stories that they tell. Yeah.
Amazing. And what is the name of your podcast? Because I'm sure people want to know. Amazing. She has interviewed so many incredible people. Like, I've even discovered new people from her podcast, from Georgia the Poet, I'm sure many of us know, to Libyanka, who sings the viral hit, I've been drinking more alcohol. Yeah, that. I don't mean to fall in love with my singing. Sorry. And we're also joined by the fantabulous Toby Rachel. Hi, Toby. Oh yeah, and of course, a massive shout out to Yolante and Black Pros Pod. Um, Toby, what made you want to work on a production like Discovering Me? It was all over the billboards. I would see it on my train on a daily basis. I'd love to know about that aspect of your job of, working behind the scenes in such a valuable production and podcast.
I like that question. So my background is also journalism, actually. And I actually had two podcasts before Discover Me. So one called Yellow Cup Podcast, which I self-produced and I basically did everything by myself. And then another one called This Was Us, which was just a fun project. I'm sorry, not This Was Us, sorry. This Is We, rather. This Was Us is a what, yeah. Which is This Is We is basically a podcast. We were just fans of This Is Us and just wanted to talk about it. So they were fun projects, very different. So when it came to Discover Me and being approached by producers of Audible to work on that, I really wanted to do that because it was a bigger team, right? It was a team of producers, a team of researchers, and it took almost a year to do. And I wanted to work on a big project that required a lot of research, a lot of editing, a lot of re-recording. It wasn't just a sit-down conversation, much like Love Janessa. You had to interview different people in the field, and then the bigger, because the concept of the podcast, just for if anyone hasn't listened to it, it was just basically discovering one person, different aspects of their lives, but also how it integrates with society. So we interviewed Lady Danbury, Bridgerton, my co-host Lady T. So we just sat down with her, and then her life story then branched out into different aspects in British society, in the acting world, and also in the Christian faith, because she's also Christian. So I wanted to do that because it was different. It was a bigger project. I felt like it was bigger than me, and it's something I've never done before.
Yeah, honestly, give it up for both of them. Yeah, the podcasting world is huge, and it's always great just to see that positive representation because I mean, essentially, this is a new industry, right? And I'd like to hope that that diversity aspect is there as well. That whether you're listening to it for the first time or you're looking to start one or appear on one, that you see a bit of yourself represented because a lot of my background is pushing for diversity in media and journalism. Also, the founder of We Are Black Journals, we've got some members in the house, give it up. And that was a reflection of the things that I didn't see working at one of the world's biggest broadcasting organizations, where I would work in areas or departments that broadcasted their stories to audiences who didn't speak English as a first language. But when you entered into that space, everyone looked the same. That's not a good thing. Wanted to shift that, wanted to amplify the voices of the 0.4% of Black journalists in the UK at that time in 2018. Now it's just under 5%. Slow progress equals progress. But I think the most important thing is just to see yourself represented. One of my most favorite quotes, which people definitely heard, is that media can't reflect society if society is not reflected in the media. So that's one thing that I definitely would advise with any kind of art or work that you want to put out there in the world. Is it representative? How certain or sure are you that these stories that you're going to tell are going to touch people, even the most privileged of people, will they be able to find some sort of connection, a takeaway, even if they don't agree with it? Will you give them the chance to learn something new based on how you've shared your art with the world? And in regards to interview techniques, which is typically a given in many podcasts, you do get some that are quite solo authored. Shout out to the people that do that. I mean, even doing this right now, it's like I'm not talking to myself, I'm talking to you. But still, it's a lot of talking. But people do that. And that's like a sole purpose of what they do on their podcast because that's their niche. But I absolutely love speaking to people. And I've been in so many different kind of scenarios, whether it's live music festivals, hotels, backstage, in the middle of a forest, in the middle of a river. Three things that I always stick with me deep in my chest when interviewing anyone, regardless of how little or how long time I have. These three things I'd love everyone to keep note of. Number one, you need to know who you're speaking to. You need to know them. Not their life story. I mean, you can dig a bit deep to see where their grandmother studied for school when they were younger, but you need to know who the person is that you're speaking to. You'd be surprised. I've worked under some talent who, I don't know how, but have claimed to have read the entire book of an author. We've all been guilty, it's fine. It's important that you know the context. But some of them don't actually know, they'll assume, like, oh, what was it like, growing up in Taiwan? Oh, I actually grew up in Japan. You need to know them. You need to at least know the basics of who you're talking to. You'd be surprised. A quick Google search, it gives a gentle icebreaker, and the person who obviously knows themselves in and out will feel quite humbled to know that you took out time to learn things about them. Not just things like date of birth, but things that are unique that could also spring up quite an infusing conversation. Number two is quality answers always, not always the questions. The reason why I say that is because you can't assume the answer you're going to get based on the question that you ask. Don't focus too much on the question. You focus on the answer because that is what essentially builds your podcast. I've been in scenarios where I've spoken to people and I've put up a really great question and the answer is so flat and boring. But these are things that you can't always predict. You really need to hone in on what they're gonna say. And if that's something that strikes a chord, if that's something that's quite clickbaity for those TikTok clips or the Instagram videos that you're gonna post up, use that because that's what will pull people in to wanna listen to more. And third and finally, do not leave without your why. If you wanna, I don't know, if you manage to somehow get Beyonce, Solange, and Jay-Z in a room, and you wanna ask that question about the elevator, what happened? Ask it. You may get an answer, you may surprise yourself. But I think it's just really important to go in there with an objective and focus on that to the best of your ability, because it's a great way to sort of visualize what the story could sound like after. I found that I've done it many times to the point where even during the interview, I'm already compartmentalizing and I know what bit I'm going to use as a teaser, what bit will stick out. So important to do that. Now, I'm going to take a sip of a beverage at some point because I can imagine that there's really awesome people in this room that are doing great things. And I also want to use it as a chance for everyone to connect with each other because I will start name dropping because there's so much excellence in this room. What we will do, we'll split into maybe two groups here, one group there, a group here, and a group there. Because I would love you to talk for the next 15 minutes on any ideas that you'd be interested to bring to life. Okay, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a new medium, is there an Instagram page that you're working on that's been a bit redundant? Is there something that you hope to be consistent in? Is there something that you want to bring out to the forefront? Is there somewhere that you want to appear on? I'd love you to chat, get to know each other, and if someone in that group could offer some sort of advice or tips to the person that would like to do something or create something, that would also be awesome. This is where the networks begin, and I'm going to leave you to it for the next 10 to 15 minutes just to talk through your art. Because honestly, the creativity in this room, it's buzzing right now. So please go for it. Chat away. This room should sound like buzzing sounds. There we go. Oh, good question. Ah, yes. Good question. We need to throw Zoom in the bin. I know we use it every day. I know we do. I mean, we have to, we don't have a choice. But for podcasting, it's a no. Like, I do not recommend it at all. The quality depletes, it downgrades your work. But one thing I want to put you all on is Riverside. Riverside FM. It's absolutely exceptional. You can speak to anyone from anywhere in the world, and it is planted in a radio system, meaning that the quality is purely for radio as well. It's absolutely free. It's a mobile phone app. The sign up is really easy, and you can also access it on desktop. So I would say that is one. But if you're someone that's going out and about and maybe you can't use that setup, I've interviewed the likes of Femi Kuti and all of these other musicians on a £30 Sony mic that I bought. Sony mic recorder. It's got a little mic at the top, and I use my iPhone headphones to listen, because it's also important to listen to the sound when you're recording it. You don't have to spend an arm and a leg. Obviously now I have nicer equipment, but to start off, please don't feel pressured to break the bank. There's Amazon, there's eBay. But if you're doing like remote interviews, Riverside is excellent for that. Yeah.
And what about editing? What do you edit?
Editing, I use Adobe Audition. Prior to that, I mean, again, as someone that spent a lot of the time at the BBC, I was only ever, and those here know, like, the editing that we've had to do, Stefania and Nur. But yeah, I use Adobe Audition because I have a MacBook, so it was something that was compatible with that. And I had to force myself to edit on that, because especially when I was traveling, I knew that I wouldn't have access to the BBC systems. I wouldn't say it's fiddly, but you need to know your way around it. But there's loads of helpful tutorials. Adobe Audition. It's really good. Yeah. If we got any more questions? Any more for any more? Time is going. Okay.
How do you relax someone who you're going to interview, who may be nervous? How do you put them at ease?
Give them a hug. No, I'm joking. No. I would say find something not quirky, and I don't think you have to do the most, but just simple things like, how did your day start off? Or thanking them for their time as well. Thank you for being here. How are you feeling about the interview? Is there anything that you'd like to know before you start? Because even if it's something that's pre-recorded, the moment someone sees that red light there, they've got a fence up, they're a bit like, oh gosh, this is it. So I definitely like to warm people up with just nice questions, reassure them as well. If there's something that they're not comfortable with, please let me know. If they want to restart, please let me know. I like to see it as professional hand-holding, engage with eye contact, use soft, a nice soft tone. And then again, you're speaking to so many people from different walks of life, but I could be speaking to, I don't know, a survivor of assault, to a criminal gang member, to a musician. It's all completely different vibes, but I like to meet people where they're at, because you'd think that a survivor of assault, or some of the things you read about them, you may think, oh gosh, they'll probably be quite quiet or reserved. I've met ex-cult members that are larger than life, bubbly. So I meet them where they're at. I think it's important to not assume that everyone is a victim, or that they should be a certain way based on their story. So I think it's quite important to bear that in mind. And yeah, time is going quite quickly. All right, we'll take these two questions. We'll start with Alfred and then go to Estelle. Hi. Oh, please introduce yourself. Sorry. And Lorna, do the same. Everyone needs to know about your excellence too. Go, Lorna.
So my name's Laura Jackson, and basically I make corporate films, but I actually want to get into just doing audio. I want to ditch the picture and focus on telling stories via audio only. Tired of carrying all that heavy equipment.
I carry all the equipment.
Teamwork. I love that. Thank you, Lorna.
So, yeah, my name is Alfreda Kevin. So I do more of environmental, climate, and energy reporting, but basically more of investigation in Africa. Yeah, I just recently started running a platform, Economics Report, registered in UK and in Nigeria.
Woo, check it out.
Please check it out.
Yes.
So I just did a podcast. So we are trying to, since we are new, trying to embed podcast into our production. And I was just wondering, do you use anything like, or have you used or missed any sound to get special sound when producing your podcast?
Ooh.
Any
Yes.
special
Yeah.
effect or sound?
Yeah, stock-free sounds. Yeah, I like to dabble with that a little bit. I wouldn't say I'm a mixologist, ooh, like that. I'm good at editing and etc. But sometimes, like, teamwork really makes the dream work. There are specialists that their job is just sound design. So if I want something to sound beautiful, I'm likely to outsource that and go to them and tell them to put some things in. But me, I can do some basics. If I'm talking about money, cha-ching, or, like an intro, an outro, fading, and etc. And I think it's always worth doing training as well. LinkedIn has so many great courses. I saw that they do quite a few for sound design. And some of them are free. I think if you do it for a short amount of time, it's free. But yeah, I'm a big believer in the saying, good artists copy, great artists steal. If you see something and you think, wow, I want it to sound like that, you can embed it in your own way into your own podcasts. Yeah. Yeah. And Estelle, hello.
Hi everyone, my name's Estelle and I'm a qualified media journalist.
Woo!
I report on social enterprise and business. So yeah, I guess I'm really, I report on business. So what I'm interested in is the business side of like podcasting and like what was the process of pitching a podcast and actually getting someone to fund it because it was a BBC.
Yeah. And you also have a podcast as well. You forgot to mention that, yeah.
I have a podcast, guys. Check it out, Philosophy Pod.
Woo!
And it's just me and my friends analysing current affairs, hot topics in the news, that sort of thing. But yeah, like that, our podcast is very independent, so I would want to know how I go about actually like getting people to fund my podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be so honest. I think the main reason why I can't say why, but when I was approached, I was in Lagos. It was at the end of 2021. And I think the subject line was something about scammer podcast. I thought, oh God, is this someone trying to scam me, talking about scamming? But it was an executive director from an independent production company. Independent production company, there are so many of them. This one is called Telltale Studios, who are based here, but there's so many other ones. There's some that are being birthed for the first time. The reason why they're very powerful is because they have the keys to bigger broadcasting organizations. So Love Janessa is a BBC, CBC production, completely different ends. You've got, the BBC, very British, very traditional, and then CBC that are like, yeah, let's go crazy with the storylines that we're going to get out there. I love my Canadians. So, the meetings were very interesting because it's two different people, but it was great because, again, Telltale, British production company, Antica, Canadian production company who had the keys. So I find that independent production companies are powerful because they're essentially the middle person and they make the process of pitching less daunting. If you genuinely have an idea that can live, because I find that they really want things that have longevity. They don't want things that are short. And that's actually quite good because the longer it is, the more money you get. So having a good relationship with one, just having a look on LinkedIn for independent production companies as well. I'll probably send a couple in like a thank you email that I'll send. But it's just a really good way to get in there, to let yourself be known. Social media is also a really great portfolio because I know it can be cringe sometimes to share stuff. I know that we've all been there, but it really does help. If you share something that you're doing, you'd be so surprised. Someone will see it. And the great thing is they will email you and they'll actually say, oh, I saw so-and-so, and now I'm getting in contact with you about X, Y, and Z. So making sure that you're always plugging stuff. So it works in two ways. You promote yourself, which is important. I always say, if I Google your full name, if you're Googleable, I should be able to have a clear indication of what it is that you do and what you're passionate about. And then secondly, to be an approachable person that's open to networking. If you set yourself a little target, every 2 weeks, I'm going to email this person to ask them how they did that. Or every 2 weeks, I'm going to send a message or an email about an idea that I have. And I'm good at holding people accountable. I'll just send you like a GIF. Some of my friends here know I'm good at that. So yeah, just don't ever hesitate to put yourself out there. And Estelle, you're doing exceptionally well. So, you know, if I was a commissioner and you emailed me, I'd be, let's work on something now. I don't know what it is, but let's do something. But I think it always starts with us and just putting things forward. Please have an ideas bank. It could be anything. You could see someone random opposite you on a train and that could remind you of something. Quickly jot that down. Because another thing that's really great about when you work with a production company, an independent production company, is that they will meet you where you're at to bring your idea from caterpillar to butterfly stage. So it's a collaborative effort, but teamwork really makes the dream work. And speaking of teamwork, I'm really excited to play a clip, our final clip of the evening, from an amazing woman called Katrina Onstad. And I had the pleasure of working with her for a year plus on the Love Janessa true crime series. I feel so close and connected to her, but we've never met in person. That's a majority of my production team in Canada. Never met, but worked very closely to bring this idea forward. And she's kindly recorded some audio to give everyone some advice and tips based on questions that I've asked her. So, yeah. It's like she's in the room. Yeah, so I guess that's the end of this podcast masterclass, my first one. And I would honestly just like to say a massive thank you for coming, for supporting. Please don't ever hesitate to send a message or a hello. I love hearing ideas. I keep them sacred, I promise. And I just really hope that this evening alone just shows you that whatever idea is, please bring it into fruition. I don't think that certain things always need a 5-year goal. I think it's just all about starting it. Bring out that unfulfilled potential. Don't focus too much on the numbers or the metrics. Just focus on the consistency. Never be afraid to ask for feedback. And know that short-term pain equals a long-term gain. It will always pay off. But yeah, from me to you, thank you for coming. Thank you. And of course, we can't let you leave without some good...